Hello, everyone. This is Michael Govier from the Cinema 9 podcast, and you are listening to Pop Goes Your World.
If you haven't already, subscribe on iTunes. And while you're there, please leave us a rating and review.
And now it's time for our feature presentation.
I'm Chris McBrien, and the pop culture from Generation X is everything to me.
And I'm Derek Myers, and I'm here to educate Chris on the great pop culture of today's generation.
Episode 273, Love Actually Movie Review. Chris McBrien along with Derek Myers. This is Pop Goes Your World, the pop culture podcast for the generations. Now this week, we're going back 20 years to the 2003 holiday film, Love Actually. But before we get to our movie review, Derek, what pop culture have you been able to take in this past week and educate me on?
Hey, Chris.
Hi.
Well, I had a chance to watch 3 brand new things.
Oh, okay.
So first one I had was a television show or television series on Netflix, season 7 of Big Mouth.
Oh, that's a good one.
So I believe you started watching this. I don't know how far into the show you got. But,
yeah, you got me onto it. I probably watched 3, maybe 4 seasons of it. I really like it. It's quite good. Just haven't had the opportunity to get back to it.
Yeah,
too busy watching Happy Days.
There you go. You know, no, it's solid. The new season is quite good. Again, I think like so many of these shows that, we'll call them in air quotes with a small g groundbreaking, like not really groundbreaking, but where you've got rude and crude humor done through animation featuring younger characters, like sort of the South Park model of, oh my God, I can't believe these little kids are saying these things.
Right.
And there's certainly, this show has a little bit of that. It built on that sort of shock value, but at the same time, this one more than a lot of its predecessors really tries to be honest about what's happening, like what happens to kids as they're going through puberty from their perception. So, I mean, that's one of the staples of why the show has been so successful. Honestly, though, I'm finding that 7 seasons in, there's not a whole lot of stuff that they can do that they haven't already done. There's not a lot in my mind that they can explore that they haven't already treaded on at least a little bit. So it's enjoyable. I find there's not as many haha out loud moments, largely because I found in the first couple of seasons, the things that I found so funny were the things I also found the most outrageous and unsuspecting. Yeah. But now you've had 7 seasons. My eyes are wide open. I got a pretty good sense of what the joke's going to be. There have been some, like I watched one. I have one more episode to go, which I'll probably watch after we record this episode. I watched one earlier today where there was a couple of scenes and a couple of lines that had me, in tears. I was laughing so much, but otherwise it's good, but it's not amazing. But if you're 7 seasons into it and you watch the first 6 seasons, like definitely give the 7th season a go. We'll see. I got one more to go, but so far so good. So that's the first one. The next one I had was a new movie that just dropped in the last week on Netflix, a possible Oscar contender. The movie's called The Killer. It's directed by David Fincher, who is known as the director of the movie Seven, for example, and Fight Club. And this one stars Michael Fassbender as the killer in the title, and he's an assassin. What I didn't realize until after I watched the movie is it's based on a French graphic novel comic book. And it definitely sort of felt a little bit like that. Once I realized, I was like, okay, I can see it. But it's more of a slow burn sort of film noir detectives type story. Like it's in the very beginning, the main character, the killer, like he narrates the whole thing, much like in a comic book when it focuses on a single character, you get like those thought bubbles. And so the narrator at the very beginning talks about how being an assassin, you have to be able to sit still, pay attention, do nothing, and basically, fight off boredom for long stretches of time while you are watching your potential victim that you've been hired to assassinate. And I've kind of felt this movie was like that too. It was kind of long, kind of slow, and there were some parts that I thought sort of were dragging a little bit, but then once you sort of get the payoff, you're like, okay, that part needed to be slow for this part to pay off. I don't think this is a movie that everyone's going to love, but I did enjoy it. I would probably give it like a B-. And I think it's one of those ones that maybe a year from now I'm going to want to come back and give it a second go. Performances were great. The way that the movie was shot is fantastic. Trent Reznor, 9 Inch Nails, does the musical score. He's done the scores for most of Fincher's movies lately. So it looked great. It sounded great. It felt great. The performances were great. I just thought that the story was not everything I was hoping it would be. But it is being already touted as possible Oscar contender for, Best Picture, Best Director, Best Performance, Best Sound. So we'll see when the award nominations come out how right or wrong I am compared to what else is in the field. And that was on Netflix as well. And then finally, I had a chance to watch a documentary.
For 40 days and 40 nights, he watches documentaries. He likes to learn about the world. It's Derek's Documentaries. Derek's Documentaries.
Oh, please educate us.
So it's just dropped on HBO this week, and it is about the Hollywood personality Albert Brooks.
Oh,
writer, director, performer.
nice.
It's called Albert Brooks Defending My Life. It's directed by Rob Reiner, who is apparently one of Albert Brooks's longtime best friends. Mm-hmm. And it is very candid. It's a biography of Albert Brooks's life, but the majority of the movie is Rob Reiner and Albert Brooks sitting in a restaurant, and Rob Reiner's just asking Albert Brooks questions and prompting him to tell stories about his past. And a lot of the stories involves both of them because they've been friends so many years. And then it's intercut with like scenes from Albert Brooks's movie and television career, and it was really good. I mean, a year ago, we saw the documentary on Bob Einstein, the Super Dave Osborne,
yes.
who is Albert Brooks's real brother. Like Albert Brooks's real name is Albert Einstein. His brother Bob always just went with Bob Einstein. So we've got this second documentary now about the other brother, probably arguably the more famous brother. A very different kind of documentary, but I think a very different kind of personality. But if you like Albert Brooks, you like his stuff, or you've sort of intrigued about like what's he been doing, how to get where he was. Like for me, he was a little before my time. Like I started to become aware of him in the late 80s and early 90s, but I really didn't know anything about his earlier works or how
he was always like really underrated. I thought
that's what all of these comedians
absolutely.
See, it's a who's who of other famous comedians and personalities in this documentary that are asked to speak about Albert Brooks. And oh my God, the how much everybody loves him and admires him and respects him, and the kind of pedestal that they put him on. And he's more influential than famous. Absolutely.
If that makes sense.
Absolutely. No, that's a great way to put it. And that's what a lot of these people, and they talk to a lot of like directors and writers, some of whom he's worked with, some of whom are just like his peers. And no, it's fantastic just to hear everybody talk about him and his life. It was really good. It was very entertaining, very educational. And not every documentary is going to be about someone whose life has been filmed, so you don't always have it's often a lot of these documentaries, it's just a lot of like still photos and people talking about it. But with someone like this, his whole life's been in front of a camera, so there was so much of it that they could cut clips to, which I found just added to the production value of this thing. No, it was quite good. It's called Albert Brooks Defending My Life. It's on HBO, and it runs 85 minutes. It's just under an hour and a half. No, it flew right by. It was really, really good. I strongly recommend it. 2 thumbs up.
Oh, nice. Okay, I've got something for you.
Fire away.
I was watching The Love Boat the other day. I know that's a real shocker. I know. And I've mentioned before, The Love Boat is on Pluto TV, which is the best app ever, by the way. Anyway, the reason this stood out to me, recently here on the podcast, you and I reviewed Pee-wee's Big Adventure. And when we talked about that movie, I mentioned one of my favorite secondary characters of all time, Amazing Larry. So he's barely in the movie at all, but he's the guy that was sitting there in Pee-wee's basement in the scene when Pee-wee's going through all the exhibits in his presentation of how his bike got stolen. And then there's this guy in the crowd. He's bald. He's got these feathers like on suction cups on his head, like a mohawk, And the guy he's talking to a guy beside him, and when Pee-wee's doing his presentation and Pee-wee yells at him, he's like, "Amazing Larry, is there something you would like to share with the rest of us?" And then the guy gets all freaked out, and like, I don't know what it is about that guy. I've always loved that guy. He's like weird and bizarre. I can't even put my finger on it exactly. I just love Amazing Larry. So anyway, all that being said, I'm watching The Love Boat the other day. And one of the subplots is titled Isaac's Crush. And it's about this famous female singer who's coming on the ship, and Isaac has all her albums. He's got this crush on her. And when she pulls up to the ship to get on the cruise, her manager gets out of the limo and escorts her up the ramp. And it's Amazing Larry.
Nice.
It's Amazing Larry. He was played by actor Lou Coutel. And he was one of these actors that basically made appearances in hundreds of TV shows over the years, like almost always like one episode. That was it. He was even in the show Alice, which we mentioned last week. He was in Alice a couple of times as a customer, but he'll always be Amazing Larry to me. And I cannot think that I'm the only person in this world who likes Amazing Larry. So I'll tell you what, if you're like me and you're a fan of Amazing Larry, shoot me an email, chris@popgoesyourworld.com, and we will start up an Amazing Larry fan club. That's what I want to do. I also got this.
Here's your dad joke of the week.
What do they always say, Derek? Never mention politics, sex, or religion, right? So
I've heard that, yeah.
Yeah, my dad joke this week is a religious joke.
Of course it is.
So here we go. Derek, what did Adam say on the day before Christmas?
I can only think of really inappropriate answers, and I'm sure yours will be even worse. So I don't know. What did he say?
It's Christmas Eve.
I think my guess about stuffing a stocking would have been a lot more fun.
But I thought it'd be better if I did it with song.
Any opportunity to sing a song.
Yeah, Hundo P.
Oh my God, of course it is.
Pop Goes Your World.
Terrible.
I'm Kibish.
Sure.
But I am the one with the neck full of gold.
I can think of 11 reasons not to like that.
World to your mother.
Before we get started on the movie review, I just wanted to say something, Derek. So now you know me, like I love Christmas. I'm like a big kid around the holidays. But that being said, I have a question for you.
Sure.
When do you think is the right time for Christmas stuff to start making an appearance? And I'm talking about like any and all of it, like Christmas songs on the radio, decorations, Christmas specials, all of it. When should it start?
All right. So in my opinion, and I mean, mine's just one opinion that doesn't necessarily carry any more weight than anyone else's, probably less weight than most. Given that we are so heavily influenced here by by the American television market, I would think that Christmas stuff should not realistically should not be out until after the U.S. Thanksgiving. But understanding that Christmas is a money-making holiday like any other made-up holiday, that you're going to want to maximize your bucks. So I think no earlier than the 1st of November. Like, you don't want to see Christmas stuff out before Halloween, but I know personally, both my wife and I were out on November 1st this year, and both of us saw Christmas things in the stores and started hearing Christmas carols. So I don't think you're going to get away from hearing the songs and seeing the stuff that early, but if I had my druthers, it would be after Black Friday, then Christmas it up for the next month, and you're good to go. I
agree with you. Like, United States has Thanksgiving in late November, unlike those of us up here in Canada. We celebrate Thanksgiving in October.
Right.
I agree. I think it's best to wait until at least after American Thanksgiving is over. But I've always felt Christmas stuff shouldn't come out until December 1st. I don't know. That's my thought. So anyway,
I mean, but in all fairness, Chris, I mean, if you have little kids, like, and I don't, so I don't have a leg to stand on here. But if I had little kids in my house, I would think that that's part of the reason that so many grown-ups love Christmas is being able to re-experience Christmas through the eyes of your children, especially when they're young and they don't have that experience and that familiarity with Christmas. So it's just that magical opportunity for them, to see them happy, to shower them with gifts, to bathe them in the pageantry that is the Christmas holiday season. So with that in mind, if I had young kids, I would probably want to jump on Christmas as early as possible. But I think as my kids started to get older, I would probably start to go back to the thoughts that I just expressed, where it's like, okay, we get it, we understand what it is, and let's just pull that back a bit.
Oh, I like, experiencing Christmas through my kids too, but December 1st is when I think it should be. Anyway,
Sure.
The reason I mentioned, I'm driving to work the other day. It's November 13th. I get in the car, I turn on the radio, Christmas songs. November 13th. Too early. Derek, this season on the podcast, anytime that we've done a movie review, it's been a film celebrating a milestone anniversary. So Christmas season is coming. That's why we're talking about it. Mm-hmm. So we decided to do some holiday-themed movies celebrating milestone anniversaries. Up first, a movie that debuted in theaters 20 years ago, and that's Love Actually. So, Derek, You nominated this movie for review here on the podcast. So maybe you can sort of kick things off by telling us why you wanted us to go back and watch this particular film.
Sure. So I actually was fortunate enough to see the North American premiere of this movie at the Toronto International Film Festival in September of 2003. And it was a crowd favorite. The crowd loved it. And almost everyone in the main cast was there promoting this movie, because a lot of them were not as famous then as they are now, especially given the bodies of work that some of them have produced in the last 20 years. The writer and director, it was like, I believe it was his first directing opportunity. He had written some things before. He had worked with Hugh Grant before, but this was sort of his premiere. And I think that the performers wanted to be there to support him, and it was a fan favorite. The crowd loved it. And over the years, I've probably watched this movie I have watched this movie every year around the holiday season. It's 20 years old, but I've definitely seen it more than 20 times, probably more than 40 times. I really enjoy this movie. I just love the idea that it's at its face value, it's a movie about the different ways that people love each other. The familial love, the romantic love, the love of friendship, the just hardcore sex elements of love. Like there's all these different ways. Like love is a word that can be interpreted so many ways and have so many different meanings. And this movie really digs into the positive aspects of it a lot. There's a little bit of the negative as well. I mean, that's part and parcel of it. But I like to think of it as a feel-good movie, even though there are some downer parts. For the vast majority, most of the characters have a very happy and satisfying ending. Most of them end up in a more positive place than they were at the beginning. And it's all wrapped around the framework of Christmas, which just adds to that feel-good component of the movie. And so, yeah, it's become a Christmas staple for me, along with a whole bunch of others. This is one that I definitely see every year, that I always look forward to watching. It does air periodically on some of the streamers and some of the cable channels outside of the Christmas window, which is fine. Sometimes these movies do, but I think more and more people have started to associate this as a holiday movie, as a Christmas movie. I'm hoping that you've had a chance to. Well, I know you've had a chance to watch it, so we'll find out what you think of it. And I know you said that your wife was looking forward to watching it. I don't know if she had seen it before and wanted to watch it again, or if she had never seen it. So I know a lot of people that have seen this. I know very few people that dislike it. I know a lot of people that have a handful of criticisms about it, but that's fair for any movie. And honestly, even through this new watch just this week, I have a few criticisms that maybe I wouldn't have been so critical of before, and we can talk about those when we get there. But no, I felt it was a good opportunity to have a look at what I think is now considered a Christmas classic. It's 20 years old, and just to have a chance to talk about it and see what we like, what we don't like, does it hold up, all that good stuff. And if it's something you haven't seen before, that's always a bonus. So That being said, tell me about your first movie watching experience of Love Actually.
Yeah, I'd never seen it before. Like I said, I think I'm going to dip into a little Spinal Tap here. And I'm going to say my review of Love Actually is simply a 2-word review. Actually.
Oh, man.
I know this movie has its fans, as you mentioned. There's people that watch it every year and they say it's a great Christmas movie, everything, but they're wrong. So I'm going to get nasty emails for this, but I got to be honest. I didn't like this movie. A lot of reasons I didn't. I'm sure we're going to get into all of them here this week. But the first thing I want to ask you is is this a Christmas movie?
Yeah, that's all. It's up for debate. I mean, it definitely is framed around the Christmas holiday. The movie begins with the title card comes up. It says 5 weeks before Christmas, and the whole movie, the events. That's how they tell you. That's how they keep you informed of like how the events are progressing. 4 weeks before Christmas,
Right.
3 weeks before Christmas. You have the one subplot with the, or well, not subplot, but one of the plots where the aging music performer is trying to have the #1 song of the year, and there's the children in the story are in a Christmas pageant, and so it's all clearly leading up to eventually up to Christmas, and I think that some of the, we'll call it some of the hokiness, some of the wish fulfillment in this movie only works or works better if it's framed in that Christmas idea. And even some of the characters say that, like, the only reason I'm professing my love for you is because it's Christmas. The only reason I'm asking you out on a date is because it's Christmas. And, you know, Christmas is a time of miracles, and we should be honest with each other, and it's a time of loving and giving. And so I'm putting my heart out there. And I think if this movie didn't take place at Christmas, some of those stories and some of those actions might seem a little less romantic and just seem a lot more creepy, which is not to say some of them aren't creepy, and we'll get into that. So I think you have to say it is a Christmas movie, if for no other reason than it takes place at Christmas. There's Christmas carols, there's Christmas songs, there's Christmas trees, there's Christmas outfits. I think it's easier to say this is a Christmas movie than say something like Die Hard, which a lot of people are like, well, that's not a Christmas movie, which I believe Die Hard is a Christmas movie. If you think Die Hard's a Christmas movie, you have to think this is a Christmas movie.
I think Die Hard's a Christmas movie, but I don't think this one is a Christmas movie because Christmas has nothing to do with this film in any way, other than maybe to be used as a plot device to try and tie together a bunch of crappy subplots together. But even that doesn't matter. Like the final sort of climax of the movie that you mentioned, when everyone's at the kids' Christmas play there, that could have been any school play. It didn't have to be a Christmas pageant.
That's fair.
I think, if anything, Richard Curtis, who wrote and directed this, was trying to exploit the fact that a lot of people find Christmas to be romantic.
I agree.
So in some ways, to me, it comes off like it's a little bit lazy on his part, trying to use Christmas to help prop up his script. Because I didn't feel there was enough romance in the script, on its own to support itself. So that's for me. I have another question for you. If this movie was made today in 2023, what would be different? I have a lot.
There's a couple of the subplots I think would have to be tweaked. Definitely the number one thing that would be different is there would be a same-sex relationship, because there's not there. That is one thing that is not in here.
Yeah,
and
there's no gay characters, and I agree.
No, but again, 20 years ago, you didn't usually see that in a mainstream movie unless it was being played for laughs, or you would see the gay best friend who has a roommate and is not actually, described as being gay, but is the effeminate man who dresses well and has a male roommate. And it's, we were at a different point 20 years ago. I think I think the movie does a fairly good job, but could probably do a better job of just being a little more cosmopolitan. There are some people of color in this, but for the most part, it's whiteys. But again, you gotta look at who made it, when it was made, and what they were trying to do with it. You can't please everybody with every movie every time, but I think absolutely on its face, you would definitely need to include a same-sex relationship in there. And a few of the other ones, and again, we sort of hit them as we go, but there's a couple in here that you couldn't put them in the way they are in there now because they don't work. They probably shouldn't have worked then, but they definitely wouldn't work today. But I think with a few small adjustments, you could make them work. Again, 20 years of experience and progression gives you a slightly different perspective on how to tell that same story and accomplish that same emotion, but to do it in a way that's maybe a little less creepy or a little more appropriate by today's standards.
Yeah, I think for me, a couple things. If it was made today, first of all, it'd probably be straight to Netflix. More women in control, I think, was needed here. And I like your point about not all white people would be nice. And the gay characters, it needed that sort of gay subplot. I was a little surprised there wasn't any gay characters. There was the moment early in the movie, I think someone thought Andrew Lincoln was in love with his best friend. And I immediately turned to my wife. I'm like, no, he's not. He's in love with his best friend's wife. It seemed obvious. So The thing is, Derek, I actually like the idea of this film. I just didn't like the execution of the film.
Okay.
So I think it's an amazing idea to have a film centered around all these different incarnations of love. This movie tries to do it, but it misses the mark, in my opinion. So,
okay. But let me ask you, and we can go into the specifics, but what I'm curious to know as we go through is, did you feel that some of the stories and some of the relationships worked better than others? Did you feel some were like, this worked and I get it, but there was, I think it's something like 8 or 10 different stories. Well, if you only think 2 of them work and 8 of them fail, that's hard to say that you enjoyed the movie. So maybe as we go through, hopefully there's at least a couple that you're like, that you can find some redeeming qualities for, or some positives in.
I think some worked better than others, but let's just look at the different versions of love that it tries to address. So we'll start with puppy love. The kid has a crush on the girl in school that sings, right?
Yeah.
And Liam Neeson has this kind of weirdly inappropriate relationship with the kid because he's talking about stuff that's way too mature for him to understand. And then, and also, the kid's kind of weird and creepy looking. I don't know. He's just a creepy looking kid. And I don't know if you recognize him. Did you recognize where he was from?
Oh yeah, no, I've seen him.
He was in the Queen's Gambit.
He was in Queen's Gambit.
Yeah.
He was in Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
He did a lot of voice work for cartoons. Yeah, he's been in a lot of stuff.
Liam Neeson basically eggs this kid on to stalk the girl at the airport and break about 50 international laws probably along the way. It would have been, I think, better if he tried to win the girl over by learning the drums, and then it doesn't work, so she moves away, but then another girl from his class likes him just for him, not for the drums. You know what I mean? Like, because they're like, musicians always get girls. That's why I always play so many instruments, Derek. But I felt like it should have been handled differently. So,
but again, and if the movie was, this is I think one of the challenges the movie had is because it's juggling so many balls at the same time. Mm-hmm. Each story sort of has to be to the extreme. Like you can't do that slow burn. Like if this was a 6-episode Netflix series, you would have the time to the beginning of the movie, it says 5 weeks till Christmas. If this was a prestige television show, each week would be a separate episode, and maybe with the last 2 episodes culminating in the last week. And I think that could work. And I think the kind of thing you're describing, definitely that would be a better way to handle it. But I think you would have more time for all the characters to see more development. And to your point, with the little kids, we don't get to meet really any of his classmates or anything like that. We don't get to see any scenes of him interacting with kids at school. Whereas if this thing was a 6-hour miniseries, you probably would. And to your point, you see there's a couple other kids in the class that he's, that like him back, and your description of a possible ending would work a lot better. But in a case like this, it's a movie. It's a sensational wish fulfillment. It's like you want the little boy to go with the little girl.
But again, all the time they spend at the airport when he's trying to like track her down, instead just be at the end of the Christmas pageant thing and have her leave and have another girl come up and just say, I like you. Oh, you like my drumming? No, I just like you, or whatever. Like I like you in math class or something. I don't know. Like it could have been handled like just as quickly.
Sure. No, I'll give you that.
Okay, so another type of love that's addressed is unrequited love. So Andrew Lincoln is in love with his best friend's wife, but he's not. He just thinks she's hot. I mean, I don't blame him, but he never even talks to her. He never said a single word to this girl. They don't know each other at all. That is not being in love with someone. That's being obsessed with a pretty girl.
Yeah.
And it comes off as creepy, and obsession is not love. So there's the scene when he goes to the house and he holds up the cue cards. I'm assuming that's supposed to be like the millennial version of John Cusack with the boombox and saying anything.
Yeah, I think
it's
so.
I don't know. That whole subplot was just wrong and creepy and weird and dumb, I thought.
Yeah, that's the one to me that is the most problematic. It was sort of on the line. I felt it was sort of on the line back then, but it definitely over time has that creepy vibe. And the fact that everyone's so good looking, I think people are willing to forgive it. But I mean, if his character what's his name? Rick from Walking Dead. If that performer was way less good looking, like, if he was just an average guy or he was overweight or something like that, this would be the audience. I don't think would be as willing to accept it. But the one thing I do think that they got right with that is, and he sort of expresses this a little bit in the dialogue through the course of the dialogue, the very limited dialogue they have, is that the fact that he does find her so attractive and maybe he does believe he's in love with her is at least he's intelligent enough to realize, like, this is my best friend. He's in love with her. I'm not going to do anything stupid to try and ruin their relationship or his relationship with his friend. And that part of it, I think you could, if we were to remake it today, I think that's more the way you need to go. But there needs to be almost like he needs to have a best friend or a buddy that he can talk to about this, so that we, the audience, know what's going on. Where and he says the whole reason I never got to know her is the very first time we don't know this for sure, but I always got the impression it's like the very first time he ever met her was probably when his buddy shows up and said, "This is my girlfriend so and so, we're engaged," and it's like, well, then I don't have a chance. And had I met her before you, that would have been a whole different thing. But you guys are clearly in love and you're together, so I'm not going to get in the way of that. It's not his place to do that. But again, he still sort of can't help himself by, with the cue cards. Well, I love you, but I'm not going to. And you're perfect to me and rah, rah, rah. And like, she should have just reached out, slapped him in the face, given him the finger, kicked him out and been like, I don't want to see you anymore. But of course, that's not what you do in a movie like this, right? She chases after him. She gives him a little kiss and everybody goes away happy. And you would love to believe that he's going to move on. Because I think he even says that. He's like, that's enough of this. That's enough. I'm moving on, or something like that.
And it wasn't an overly romantic or sexual kiss that she gives him.
No, not at all. Not at all. And I mean,
it was almost like a thank you kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then just, whatever.
Yeah. But I mean, you really could have done it the other way and it's gone super creepy. And like when she found the video, it could have been like him like taking shots of her butt, and like whenever she bent over to pick something up, he would be there like zooming in on her butt or trying to look down her shirt. And it's like, dude, you are super creeping on this girl. But again, they tried to make it like, oh no, he's just, he's obsessed with her. She's beautiful. She's the prettiest, most perfect woman he's ever seen. And this is the closest he's ever going to get. But it's like, you got to wonder. That video was just her. Like, why did he have it there? Why was it so readily accessible? How frequently did he watch that video? What was he doing with his hands when the video was on? Like, sort of begs a certain questions, which, again, she didn't seem to freak out. So I kind of hope that she didn't go there. But you got to think like a half an hour later, she would have come to that same conclusion and been like, I don't want to be anywhere near this guy. But,
all right. So another version of love that was, I guess, tackled in this film. I don't know whether you call it maybe stagnant love. The older couple, played by Alan Rickman and Emma Thompson.
Yep.
They've been married for a long time, so things have got stagnant, or at least complacent, I guess might be the word.
Sure.
And so there's that whole thing with his younger, attractive secretary. Like what was even that all about? Like, he never really flirts with her. She's always coming on to him.
Yeah.
And then he buys her that expensive necklace. But are they actually having an affair? Like, are they not? It's not really clear.
It's deliberately left up in the air, but I was reading some of the behind the scenes stuff, and they asked the writer about it, and he said in his mind that yes, there was a sexual relationship that happened, and although it doesn't come right out and say it, if you want to, like, that was his expectations. He was basically saying in an interview, he wanted to very clearly indicate that yes, this is what's happened without actually showing it or saying it. But I mean, I've watched it a bunch of times, and sometimes
why they don't have a problem showing a lot of other stuff.
I don't know. I think again, maybe it could have been for time. I mean, the movie's 2 hours and 15. Like, they could probably have trimmed 15 minutes really out of this movie. They should have got it under 2 hours.
Oh yeah, they could have cut 45 minutes off this movie. But in this relationship, I felt like it should have been more obvious. It's like he should have had a physical affair with her, because because I think when Emma Thompson finds out and she puts on that brave face because of her children, then we could have properly addressed another kind of love, which is, her love for her family and her children. Again, I just feel like the movie just misses the mark again and again. But
Well, and with that story, I always felt that if we were supposed to absolutely be certain that Alan Rickman did something, like, it didn't really seem like he was reciprocating this relationship from this new woman who's working in his office, and she's clearly hitting on him and throwing herself at him. I never really got the impression that he was into it. Like, I mean, obviously everyone likes it when a pretty girl winks at you and waves at you and flirts with you, and that's great. But it's like, when you've been married a long time, you're not going to leave your wife for something like, well, I mean, you hope you wouldn't, but it wasn't like I think if there had been a scene, and maybe even probably at a Christmas party because his wife was there, but there was nothing that I got out of it where it was like clear that he had made up his mind that, oh yeah, I'm doing this. Like, there was a little bit of the banter, but I think
then make it clear one way or the other.
Yeah.
Make it clear that he's going to do that and explore that, or make it clear that he's not going to do that to explore that kind of love.
So let me ask you this. If he, let's assume that nothing physical happened. Now, that's not to say that maybe nothing was going to happen, but he buys her the necklace, but nothing has happened up until then. And the wife confronts him. And so obviously after this confrontation, even if he was thinking about doing it, it's clear that at that point he's not going to. Do you think that changes things at all? Like, how much would that change?
He's still emotionally cheating, I guess.
Oh, for sure.
On his wife. So there's that, and that's a real problem.
And maybe that's if there's a remake of this, maybe there's an element that's thrown into this new remake where somebody has a relationship with somebody online where you don't actually meet them. You don't actually see them physically. You don't even know who they are, but you essentially are cheating on your spouse with somebody online through chats. Like, maybe that's some way to add a more modern element to it.
But back in 2003, I feel they should have made a sharper choice. That's all I think. So what else was there? There was hang
on, let me ask you so the scene where he goes to buy the necklace and Mr. Bean is there as the salesman.
Hated that scene.
Tell me, you didn't like that scene?
Hated that scene.
Oh my God, that's like, I love that scene. That's one of the best scenes. Whenever you ask people about this movie, they're like, oh, the scene where he buys the necklace. Like, I love it. No,
it was just prolonged and stuff, and I didn't like that scene. But I also don't like Mr. Bean. I don't like Rowan Atkinson.
Okay.
So I guess that's it. So Laura Linney, I want to get into her subplot because she's obsessed with this guy in the office, and then finally gets him home, and then they're just starting to get in bed, and she gets a call from her brother. So she leaves the guy to be with her brother, who it turns out is mentally ill. And I feel like this could have just been so good. The whole idea of just throwing aside physical love in favor of something more important, it just, but it comes off as very superficial, I felt. Although Laura Linney's boobs make an appearance. So there was that. Oh, speaking of which, my wife says to me when we're watching this, and she's like, I think the only reason Derek likes this movie is that there's boobs in it.
It's not the only reason, but...
it got me thinking, there's not a lot of Christmas movies with boobs in them. Really, like Christmas movies with boobs was never really a big thing, even back in the 80s, which you totally expect.
Yeah, but let me ask you. So hang on, let me go back then. Pre-boob question. Yeah, the scene with Laura Linney where she brings the guy back to her apartment and they're standing in the doorway, and she's like, "Can you hold on for just a minute?" And she steps around the corner and she does her little happy dance. Yeah, and then goes back again. That's my wife's favorite part. Every time this movie's on, she just loves that part.
Laura Linney could act. She is such a talented actress.
I agree.
She could make anything work. Like, I don't know. There is just something about her. I don't know what it is. It's an intangible. I love her. I just think she's fantastic. I think she's beautiful and talented and all that. And then you got this scene where I'm like, oh my God, she's going to take off her top. This is like, this should be fantastic for me because I love Laura Linney. But it just, I don't know. It just didn't quite work for me. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. So other types of love. Inappropriate love. The Prime Minister and his intern.
Yeah, that. Now, and again, I think in any sort of a remake, that one, you need to switch the genders. I think if the person with the power is a woman, I think the scene is not any less inappropriate, but I think it's more acceptable. I think people are more accepting in that that dynamic, or maybe that's the same sex couple. Like, who knows? But to have a man,
the world leader, digging her. Bill Clinton did this; it didn't work out.
Well, and did you love Billy Bob Thornton as the Bill Clinton-esque president? Like, that was great. Yeah. He's in it for 2 minutes, and it's just like he's so perfect.
Oh yeah, you hate him, and
that's the thing. He does a perfect job.
And that's the thing. I think even when Hugh Grant starts to kind of like her. Is it just because he's jealous because the American president is coming on to her? Like, I don't understand that. Like, and then there's that whole scene
before that, he already said the thing where even right at the very beginning where he sort of does the second glance at her and then he says something like to himself, he's like, oh, this is going to be a problem. Like, I think at that point you're supposed to realize like he likes her.
But so then they make him be the hero by standing up to the president in the press conference. Why didn't he say something to the president in the moment? Like, I mean, come on, dude. I don't know.
He's a wuss. I don't know.
Yeah, I just. And
it's not the British thing to do. I don't know.
The other thing with that whole subplot that got me was what the hell was the deal with all the fat jokes? Everyone calls her fat. They're like, oh, you have huge thighs. And her family calls her plumpy. And even the prime minister makes a crack about her weight. She's not fat. Like, it's just all so weird and inappropriate and poorly done. I'm thinking, what the heck was going on there?
There were a few fat jokes. That was one. And so when my wife and I watched it this week, that's what we said after. I was like, there's a lot more fat jokes in this than I remember. And I'm wondering if it was just because in 2003, it was sort of already a point where they knew there were certain things they could and couldn't make fun of. And at the time, they probably felt, well, if we make fun of someone's weight, that's still acceptable. But to your point, the performer that plays Natalie, I don't think she's overweight. I think she's gorgeous. I think she's very attractive in this movie, and like I don't find her fat at all. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, maybe it's just a different standard, and I don't know. So, and that's one thing. Even from day one, I've sort of gone, that just didn't seem to work.
All right, so another exploration of love is the ugly guy who just wants sex.
Oh,
so he goes to Wisconsin.
Yeah,
Wisconsin.
I love when he's leaving for the airplane and he goes, here comes Colin, and he's got a big knob. Yeah. Like, I love that. I laugh at that every time.
But of all places, he goes to Wisconsin. It's like, I got the kicked out of me in Wisconsin once. Forget it. That's from Stripes, by the way. So then he goes there and immediately meets up with these super hot chicks. He gets to sleep with them all as if. Like, I mean.
But that goes back to what he had said earlier in the dialogue where he said, I'll bet you any random typical bar in America has 10 more beautiful women than the whole country of England. And I mean, I think we're supposed to believe it's also his perspective too, right? It's the idea that, he's in a new place and everyone's going to just look super hot to him. But that's a fun scene. Yeah. Like every woman that comes in is more attractive than the one before.
Right.
Yeah. We can't afford pajamas. We only have one big bed to sleep in. It's like, oh, gee,
but they're not lesbians. It's
almost like, dear Penthouse Letters, I never thought it would happen to me, but there I was in Wisconsin.
So the other kind of love I want to talk about is porn love. I don't know what else to call it. But I felt like it was maybe one of the better story arcs. How the two actors that are stand-ins for porn. I don't even know if that's a thing. Do porn actors need stand-ins? I mean, lighting is super important, I'm sure, in porn. But I mean, really? Stand-ins? Like so.
So this is the thing, and I sort of caught this the last few times through it. I don't think they were stand-ins for a porno movie. I think they were supposed to be stand-ins for like real performers that were going to be having like an erotic love scene. Because he even says at one point he stood in for Brad Pitt, and if you look at the production value of the sets where they are, like those look like real expensive Hollywood sets. And not that I'm
why is she down on her knees basically simulating oral sex with them?
Well,
that doesn't make sense.
I guess you can interpret it in either way, because I actually read a thing when I was going through and doing the homework on this where they talked about how for the kind of stand-in roles that those two were doing, it wasn't necessarily that the performer was, same height, same weight. It was more important that they had same skin tone, same hair color, same because and you probably know this better than I do, but they're trying to measure like how to set up the lighting for when the real performer is on the set, and they're not just paying, you know, Brad Pitt $1 million a day to stand around while they measure the lighting.
But they wouldn't have the girl down on her knees simulating.
Probably not. I think that was probably done more.
It was definitely for porn. But
I like, one of the things I like about this dynamic is the first time they meet each other, they basically take their clothes off, and so the mystery that so many relationships have around, like, oh, well, I'm going to meet this person. If I like them and I go on a date and I get to kiss them, and eventually there might be some touching. And then you sort of like, the pinnacle is, and then at the very end, I'm going to get to potentially see them naked. And like, that's when you know you have arrived in this relationship. And with this one, it's sort of the opposite. It's like, boom, here's everything I am. I'm standing here naked. And now let's get to know each other. And so when they eventually have the conversation of like, hey, do you want to go out? And she's like, all I want for Christmas is you, and all that kind of stuff. It's like, it's not necessarily, hey, I'm just in this for the carnal of it. It's like they've already seen the goods. So I really liked how this one sort of flipped the tradition on its head. I did like that too, how they were like, they're naked, but then when they get up together, they're super shy. And when he finally gets a kiss from her, he's all like giddy and boyish. Yeah. So I thought that was kind of cool, but you know, I felt like they needed to explore that a little bit more. Like, and maybe there were just too many story arcs going on, but maybe they should have just had fewer story arcs and more with substance. I don't know. Maybe that was that subplot. When they show this on syndicated TV, they just cut it right out. They cut out every part of that relationship, and the scene at the very end where they bump into them at the airport, they cut that out too. And those two performers are just removed completely from the edit. Which makes sense. So a lot of people that I know, when they watch this, and you know, and then they don't realize that the first time they ever saw it was on television. So then when they see it on a streamer or on a Blu-ray later, they're like, oh, what's with this scene? Like, I remember somebody I know was like, yeah, we watch Christmas movies with my family, and I'd suggest we watch Love Actually because it's so great, and rah, rah, rah. And they sat down, and they're like, then this scene comes on with the people being naked, and the guy was like, I don't remember this scene. I wouldn't have been watching it with my grandma and my mom in the room, kind of thing. So, but yeah, so I think some people who maybe have only seen it once or twice, they maybe don't know that I missed sequence. That one. The other story arc that was a bit more traditional was Colin Firth. So him and the maid fall in love, and they have to overcome this barrier of language. Yeah. You know, so love can prevail. Like that's more like a typical rom-com type thing, which I thought. But the only story arc that I actually really enjoy, or I like the best at least, was the old rocker. Now, I'll be honest, I think his whole story was actually kind of dumb. Yeah. The only thing I liked about was at the end when he gets to go to Elton John's party, and instead he comes home early to see his manager, who he's called names, and he's called him fat, and he's calls treated him fat bad. Through the movie, and you know, like, again, for a guy who's probably 50 or 60, like, yeah, he's a little on the heavy side, but I wouldn't call him fat. I know a lot of fatter guys than that guy. But and I like how he says to him, "You're the love of my life," and he means it in like a platonic way. Yes, you know, yes. It's just a love of someone that's always been with you, always been by your side. Yeah. I think that might have been my favorite scene of the movie. Like, really, yeah, because I think the actor that played the manager really sold it too. Like, he was quite good in that scene. That would have been a really tricky scene, I think, to navigate as an actor. So props to him. One thing about him, too, when I first saw him, I thought he was like a fat Richard Dawson. I don't know. That's why I was like, is that Richard Dawson? But I liked that whole idea of this platonic love, you know, as a storyline, too. Which you've got this rocker who can get any girl he wants. He's doing that video with all these, like, Robert Palmer girls in it and stuff. In the Christmas outfits, No, I'm going to just go back and spend time with you, my manager, because you're the person that has meant the most to me, and I love you more than anybody else. Like, I thought that was a pretty good part of the movie, I thought. Yeah. No, that's fair. So a little bit with the cast. I mean, you know, it was a huge cast. Like, I almost think it was a kind of a distraction in a way. It just felt like they just kept throwing all these familiar faces at the, you know, so the audience can go, oh, look who that is. Oh, cool. Well, but keep in mind, some of these people, like, even in the way that the names are presented at the beginning of the movie, there's a lot of the people that are in this that maybe don't have huge parts that have gone on to become much more well known that at the time were not famous or were not as well known. And so to your point, now you watch it and it's a little distracting. It's like, oh, I know that guy. That's Rick from Walking Dead. Well, believe me, at the time, nobody knew who he was. Even Keira Knightley was a relative nobody when this came out. And Chiwetel Ejiofor, like, until he was in 12 Years a Slave and started getting like a lot of critical props, he was just another British character actor. So you have those three performers in that subplot that most people are just like, I don't really know who any of these people are. They're all pretty as hell, and I'll watch them do just about anything. But it's like, who are they? Here we are 20 years later. It's like, yeah, look at these three super famous, very successful people. And it's like, so I get where you're coming from.
Yeah, I think I'd like to just talk about some of the lesser actors in it, for lack of a better term. I don't want to say that they're lesser, but less famous, at least. Okay. So the maid, Aurelia, I think was her name, Lucia Moniz. I was watching. I was like, I'm for sure I've seen her in something. Like, she just looked so familiar. But I went through her IMDb, nothing. Didn't know. Like, I'm like, how do I know her? Nope, don't know.
But I assume she's got a lot of credit. Like, I imagine for movies like this where they have a performer that's supposed to be not English speaking, like, it's clear English is not her first language. I assume she's got a very good career in Europe.
She does. In Portugal. She's Portuguese, and she's like a huge Portuguese actress.
Yeah. And because I read a lot of stuff where they were talking about, so I don't know if you saw the poster of the movie, but it's basically it's set up like a gift, a wrapped gift box with like garland and stuff. People. And so it's like basically all these segments of the box. And it's the different pictures of all the different relationships. And I was reading how as the movie was marketed in different areas of the world, different performers were subbed in and out based on who was famous in what region. Like, they talk about Aurelia being on the cover in, anywhere where there was, people speaking Portuguese, or the guy Paulo, the boyfriend, for the Laura Linney storyline. He's not in the real poster, but when they were marketing it, I believe in South America, they made sure to put his face on there because he was
in Brazil, because he was like the Tom Cruise of Brazil. Remember, he was in Lost.
Yeah,
he was Paulo.
Episode. And he was in the movie 300, based on the Frank Miller graphic novel with not Robert Rodriguez, Zack Snyder directing. He played Xerxes, the main villain, and so again he's had opportunities, and he's had some mainstream movies where he's been like featured more prominently.
I remember in season 3 of Lost, they introduced him, Paulo, and Nikki. And nobody liked him, so they just killed him off, which I thought was interesting. Annie was played by Nina Sosanya. She was a girl that worked with Alan Rickman. She looked so familiar to me. And I looked her up on IMDb too. Couldn't place her in anything. Maybe she was like another actress or something.
She reminds me of Jerry Ryan, who plays 7 of 9 on Star Trek.
No. That was the German girl that was coming on to Alan Rickman. Yes, I agreed with you. Yeah. I'm talking about the black girl. She had a space in her teeth. Her name was Annie, and I was like, I know her from somewhere. Where have I seen her?
The one who worked with the Prime Minister?
Oh, with the Prime Minister. Sorry, yes, that was it.
Yeah, she's done a lot of
figure out where
she's big. She's a big British performer. I've seen her in a lot of British shows.
And then also, I think her name was Stacy. She was the first hot Wisconsin girl that guy meets. I remembered her right away. As soon as I saw her, I recognized her. She was in Seinfeld. She was married to this bad tennis player. And then the tennis player tried to get her to come on to Jerry, so Jerry wouldn't tell people he was bad at tennis. I recognized her. But one I wanted to mention too was Claudia Schiffer. This whole thing was just dumb. So Liam Neeson has this thing for Claudia Schiffer. Don't blame him. And it seemed like he had this sort of hall pass thing with his wife that, if they ever had the chance, he could be with Claudia Schiffer or whatever. And then his wife dies. And then at the end of the movie, she shows up. But it's not Claudia Schiffer. She's like playing some woman named Carol or something. I'm like, what? Like, so in this world that they've created in this movie, they've established the existence of Claudia Schiffer. She exists as a supermodel. Right. So why not just have Claudia Schiffer show up at the end? And then Liam Neeson gets to be with her. It'd be like his wife. They had this hall pass thing. His wife is dead, and he gets to go and be with Claudia Schiffer, the one woman that his wife approved that he could be with. Like, just let it go like that. I just don't get it.
I think you're just supposed to believe that it's like, it's someone that he like. It's the mother of one of the son's friends. It's supposed to have a resemblance to her. I mean, the fact they actually got the performer is one thing, but I don't know. I thought it was fine.
What about the song? That song that old guy was playing, was that an actual song? I think my wife was like, I think this song was popular from this movie.
Yeah,
remember the one that was like, I feel it in my fingers. I feel it in my toes. And I'm like, I recognize that. Like, I've heard that before.
Yeah. So they were doing a Christmas cover of a different song, and the original song I was reading, it had been popular like 10 years earlier, and it had actually been used in one of his other movies. So it had been in a movie soundtrack, and so it was sort of like a little wink, like we're going to make a remake of a movie that I helped make famous through one of my previous movies.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I gotta say, it really seemed familiar. And then the title, Love Actually, what does it mean? I think they alluded to something at the beginning, but maybe I missed it.
Yeah, in the dialogue, he talks about at the very beginning where he's like, I like to go to Heathrow Airport because everyone coming off the airplane is just happy to see everybody else, and you can see all the people hugging and in love. And he said, I think you'd find that love actually is all around us. And I believe that was the original title, was Love Actually is All Around Us, and then they just trimmed it down.
So some alternative titles that they could have made instead of Love Actually, Long Actually, because this movie is friggin' long. It's way too long.
Isn't that your nickname, bud?
Oh, my.
It is. Oh, my. Also, another title could have been Dumb Actually, Boring Actually, or as I mentioned at the top, Actually, I would have went with. But Love Actually was actually made on a budget of $40 million. It took in $56 million at the domestic box office in the U.S., so that was good enough for 49th place that year in 2003. It came out in November, so it made all of its money in that calendar year of 2003. But it was outperformed by such films as Brother Bear and Open Range. But Derek, it did do better than such luminaries as Under the Tuscan Sun, Secondhand Lions, and of course, From Justin to Kelly. But that year, Finding Nemo was the #1 movie at the box office. Pirates of the Caribbean, Curse of the Black Pearl. So that would have been What's Her Face?
Yeah, Keira Knightley.
Yeah, Keira Knightley was in that by then. And then The Matrix Reloaded, Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, and Bruce Almighty were the big ones. So, the movie wasn't, it was okay as a hit, okay with critics and stuff. And I don't feel like it's held up over the years, But
at the same time, it is held up in the sense that it's continually, now that it's considered a holiday movie, we see it every year, November and December, back on TV. And I mentioned you before, when I used to work at the video store, like, this is where the real money was on holiday movies, because every holiday people want it. So there's just, you had to acquire the inventory, or in the case of a streaming, they're obviously acquiring the rights. They're paying for it. So somebody's making money on the back end of this thing. And so it doesn't seem like it's going away anytime soon.
No, it's probably still going to be here. Do you want to give me a rating out of 10 for this movie?
I'd probably give it a 7.5.
Pretty high. I'd probably give it a 5, to be honest with you.
Given how you usually rate the things you really don't like, I'll take a 5.
Yeah. There was almost like nuggets of something there, but it just wasn't quite delivered properly, I felt. That was just my thought. But
there was one other thing I want to mention. So in England a few years ago, so there's I don't know all the specifics, and I'm sorry, I should have done the homework, but they do a charity day called Red Nose Day, where in England they collect money for charity, and they often have like famous celebrities do like short videos and things like that. And the one year, a couple of years ago, what they did was they basically did a Love Actually sequel film, and it was like about 7 or 8 minutes long, and it was revisiting a lot of
much shorter than the original film.
Yeah, it revisited all these characters like 10 years later, and sort of like, where are they and how are they doing? Obviously didn't feature every story because they didn't have time, and I believe by that point Alan Rickman had passed, so that was part of the reason that story wasn't involved. And they tread back on some of the jokes, and so like one of the things they do in the new version is is that Hugh Grant is still the prime minister, and he does another dance sequence, except this time it's to Hotline Bling by Drake. And then again, at the end of the film, they all talk about, like, you know, please give to charity, blah, blah, blah. And that's all well and good. But so if you are a fan of this movie and you haven't seen the Red Nose Day sort of sequel follow-up, it's worth taking a look. I'm sure it's on YouTube. And it's fun to just revisit these characters all those years later.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, on that note, what do you say we have some
fun with Caveman?
Okay, so we're going to play a little game here, Derek, that I like to call Pick the Flick. Yeah, pick the flick. You get the synopsis, then pick the flick. You get the year, pick the flick. You know how this game works. So
I sure do.
I give you the year and the synopsis. You just guess the title of the film. Common thread. All the movies, actually, Derek, it's super easy. They all have the word love in the title.
Oh, boy.
Okay. All right. So we're going to start with 2022. Thor enlists the help of Valkyrie, Korg, and ex-girlfriend Jane Foster to fight Gore the God Butcher, who intends to make the gods extinct.
That would be Thor, Love and Thunder.
All right, 1987, an outcast secretly pays the most popular girl in school $1,000 to pretend to be his girlfriend for a month.
Yeah, Can't Buy Me Love.
Yep, starring 2023's sexiest man alive, Patrick Dempsey. Again, I totally got over for that award, by the way. All right, 1964. An insane American general orders a bombing attack on the Soviet Union, triggering a path to nuclear holocaust that a war room full of politicians and generals frantically tries to stop.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to get the full title right. So it's Dr. Strangelove or How I Learned to Love the Bomb.
I'll give it to you. It's Dr. Strangelove is what I was looking for. Or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb.
There we go. Yeah, I knew I didn't have it right, but it was close.
A little bit newer. 1998, the world's greatest ever playwright is young, out of ideas, and short of cash, but meets his ideal woman and is inspired to write one of his most famous plays.
Right. Shakespeare in Love.
All right, 1977, James Bond investigates the hijacking of British and Russian submarines carrying nuclear warheads with the help of a KGB agent whose lover he killed.
Oh, we did this one on the podcast, right? This was this The Spy Who Loved Me?
It was The Spy Who Loved Me, but we didn't do it on the podcast. We did For Your Eyes Only.
Oh, right.
On the podcast.
Right.
All right, 1963, James Bond, once again, willingly falls into an assassination plot involving a naive Russian beauty in order to retrieve a Soviet encryption device that was stolen by Spectre.
Well, we know it. What did I just say? I just said The Spy Who Loved Me. So this has to be From Russia with Love. Took me a second. But
Yep. Remember, love is in the title. Okay. 1967. Idealistic engineer trainee and his experiences in teaching a group of rambunctious white high school students from the slums of London's East End.
Was this To Sir with Love?
It was such a good movie. Okay, 1981. Parental disapproval of a passionate romance between two teenagers leads to arguments, circumstance, insanity, and tragedy.
What was the year again?
1981.
Jeez. I have no idea.
My Endless Love.
Sure.
Okay. You don't know Endless Love?
Never heard
Brooke Shields? With Brooke Shields? Oh, come on. All right. 1970. A boy and a girl from different backgrounds fall in love, regardless of their upbringing, and then tragedy strikes.
I have no idea.
I'll give you a hint. The tagline was, "Love means never having to say you're sorry."
Oh,
you can do it. You can do it.
I don't know. I want Brian's song, but that's not.
No, it was Love Story. Love Story.
Oh, it literally was Love Story. Oh my God.
Yeah, with Ryan O'Neal and Lee McGraw. Okay, 1999. After 19 years of playing the game he's loved his whole life, Detroit Tigers pitcher Billy Chappell has to decide if he's going to risk everything and put everything out there.
This was just on TV this week. I was watching part of it. It's Kevin Costner for Love of the Game.
Very good. All right, 1993. The story of singer Tina Turner's rise to stardom and how she gained the courage to break free from her abusive husband, Ike Turner.
Yeah, it's What's Love Got to Do with It?
2008. Pitka, an American raised outside of his country by gurus, returns to the States in order to break into the self-help business. His first challenge is to settle the romantic troubles and subsequent professional skid of a star hockey player whose wife left him for a rival athlete.
This is that Mike Myers one, right? It was it was The Love Guru. Was that what it's called?
It was. I never bothered to actually watch that stupid thing.
Bad.
Yeah. All right, 1969. Down on his luck race car driver Jim Douglas teams up with a little Volkswagen Bug that has a mind of its own, not realizing Herbie's worth until a sneaky rival plots to steal him.
Right, that was Herbie the Love Bug.
Okay, this last one isn't a movie, but I just had to get it in there.
Okay.
The romantic and comic tales of the passengers and crew of the cruise ship Pacific Princess.
I have no idea. It's not like you ever talk about it on the show. How would I ever know?
I'll just give it to you.
I was going to say, I refuse to answer.
It's the Love Boat, as we know.
No.
Oh, of course. I know. No, surprising. Okay, so you nominated a Christmas movie celebrating a major milestone anniversary. And I think it's worthwhile that we take some time and look at a few other Christmas movies celebrating milestone anniversaries as we lead up to the holidays this year. So I'm going to go back 35 years. Okay. 1988, this Christmas film was released in theaters. A little bit of a different take on an old Christmas story, and that's Scrooged.
Oh, nice.
With Bill Murray.
I saw this in the theater.
I saw this in the theater when it first came out. Yep. So we're going to watch Scrooged, and we're going to come back next week, and we're going to talk about it, and we're going to review it here. You're up for that?
Oh, yeah. I love this movie. I can't wait to rewatch it. It was on my rewatch list. Again, coming into the holidays, I've got about a dozen movies I like to watch. This is one that I watch almost every year, and it was coming up on my list. So now I got yet another reason to watch it. Yeah.
Whereas me, I probably have not seen this movie in 25 years. It came out 35 years ago. I bet you I haven't seen it in 25, 30 years.
Well,
but like I say, I saw it in the theater when it first came out.
I absolutely remember seeing it in the theater because there's the whole thing, and we'll talk about it next week. There's a whole thing at the end credits where he's like, now just the girls sing. Now just the men. No, just the real men. Oh, you guys are terrible. Now just the right side of the audience. And I was in the audience when this was going on, and like the people in the audience were laughing, and it was like, what's going on with this? He's talking right to us. So yeah, no, this is good. I liked it.
All right, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to come back and we're going to review Scrooged next time out. So until then, I'm Chris McBrien. That's Derek Myers, and we're saying thanks a lot for taking the time to listen to Pop Goes Your World, the pop culture podcast for the generations.
Thanks for listening to Pop Goes Your World. You can contact Chris and Derek at popgoesyourworld.com. Please take a minute and review the podcast on iTunes or wherever you download and listen to the show.